Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The book in my hands was the only sound in the quiet room, its pages turning softly under the glow of the bedside lamp. I had just found my rhythm, sinking deeper into the story, when the mattress dipped beside me. My breath caught, his presence was unmistakable. Warmth radiated from him before he even touched me. I tried to keep my eyes on the page, but then his fingers brushed lightly against my wrist, the sudden contact sending a shiver straight through me. My pulse stumbled, betraying the calm I wanted to show. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned closer, his gaze fixed on me with a weight that made it impossible to concentrate on the words in front of me. "Still reading," he murmured, his voice teasing, low, and unhurried. I swallowed, aware of how near he was. His breath ghosted against my cheek, and the book wavered in my grip. That playful spark danced in his eyes, daring me to answer while knowing silence said more than words ever could. I tried to focus, tried to ignore how his hand lingered at the edge of my blanket, the way his thumb traced circles absent-mindedly on the back of my hand. The room seemed smaller, air thicker, every sound amplified, the steady hum of the lamp, the rhythm of my heartbeat, the subtle creak of sheets shifting. The tension was undeniable. He didn't rush, and that made it worse, or maybe better. Each pause was deliberate, each look longer than necessary, each touch half a question, half an answer. My chest rose faster, though I tried to steady it, my fingers tightening around the book as though it were an anchor. Then, in one sudden motion, the blanket slipped lower, and his hand moved with a boldness that startled me. My book fell slightly, pages bending under my loosened grasp. I looked up at him fully now, caught in that unblinking stare, and the room seemed to tilt, leaving no space between us. And just as my lips parted to speak, he moved again. The silence stretched after that moment, the air so heavy I could hear my own pulse echoing in my ears. I held his gaze longer than I intended, but then, like always, I retreated, lowering my eyes back to the book. Pretending to read was easier than admitting how unsteady he made me feel. We weren't always like this. There was a time when laughter filled our nights, when I couldn't wait to tell him about every little thing that crossed my mind. But years, responsibilities, and unspoken disappointments had quietly reshaped us. Somewhere between errands, deadlines, and routine, we stopped looking at each other the same way. Or maybe we simply forgot how. And yet, here he was. Sitting beside me, his nearness stirring something I thought I'd buried under practicality and schedules. His fingers brushed my shoulder, casual enough to be dismissed but deliberate enough to leave no doubt. "I miss this," he whispered suddenly, so softly I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. The words slipped into me, stirring guilt and longing in equal measure. I wanted to ask, "Miss what?" The way I used to laugh without hesitation? The way I used to reach for him first thing in the morning? Or the way I once looked at him as though he was the only certainty in my world? But I stayed quiet, afraid the truth might shatter the fragile balance we still held. Instead, I shifted, letting my hand brush against his arm. A subtle gesture, almost accidental, but his eyes caught it instantly. He didn't smile, not fully, but there was something flickering there, a recognition, a silent plea. The tension wasn't only about attraction, it was about memory, regret, and the deep ache of two people who had once belonged so completely to each other. The closeness now felt dangerous, like stepping too close to a flame I knew could consume me, and yet I leaned anyway. He tilted his head, studying me with that unreadable intensity. "You still hide from me," he said, his tone low, almost resigned. The words cut deeper than I expected. He wasn't wrong. I did hide, from my doubts, from my unmet desires, from the fear that maybe he no longer wanted me the way he once did. But tonight, the way his hand lingered at my side said otherwise. I closed my book fully this time, setting it aside. My heart thudded at the finality of the gesture. His eyes followed, sharp, alert. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Truly seen. And before I could decide whether to lean into him or retreat again, he moved closer. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore, it pulsed, alive with things neither of us dared to say. His closeness was too much, yet not enough, a teasing restraint that left my breath uneven. I caught myself wondering if he still thought of me the way he once did, or if the sudden heat in his gaze tonight was born of something else, jealousy, perhaps, or fear of losing me to the distance that had been growing between us. "Do you still wait up for me?" he asked suddenly, voice low, laced with something sharp. The question struck me. He knew the answer. There were nights I stayed awake with my book, pretending it was the story keeping me company, when really it was the silence I was fighting against. Nights when I told myself he didn't notice me slipping away, even though the ache of his absence weighed heavier than I let on. "I don't wait," I said softly, though my tone betrayed me, my eyes flicking away too quickly. His jaw tightened. "Then why does it feel like you do?" That heat between us shifted, charged now with more than attraction. It was suspicion, longing, a wounded pride that made his touch more dangerous than comforting. He reached for the edge of the blanket again, but this time, his movement was bolder, almost challenging me. My chest tightened, torn between the desire to resist and the temptation to let him in. I looked at him, really looked. His eyes searched mine, desperate for something unspoken, something I wasn't sure I could give. Or maybe I wanted to give too much. A rush of memory flooded me, the way he once watched me across crowded rooms, the way his hand on my back used to claim me without a word. That same look was in his eyes now, fierce and undeniable, but shadowed by doubt. "Do you ever think of anyone else?" he whispered, almost a growl, as though the thought itself tortured him. The question stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't just jealousy, it was a confession of his own fear, his own longing. And though I didn't answer, the way I leaned ever so slightly toward him gave him more truth than words could. The space between us narrowed, trembling on the edge of something forbidden. The room felt smaller than ever, the lamplight too dim, the silence too loud. Every breath I took seemed to echo between us, shallow and uneven. He shifted closer, and though there was still space left between our bodies, it felt like the smallest movement could erase it completely. I tried to steady my hands against the book in my lap, but it was useless. It slipped away, tumbling onto the sheets with a muted thud. His eyes followed it, then rose to meet mine, sharper, darker, as if that sound had sealed something between us. We were alone. Truly alone. No distractions, no excuses, no buffer of words to hide behind. Only the truth lingering in the air, raw and restless. "Tell me," he said softly, leaning in so close his breath skimmed my cheek. "Do you feel it too?" The question wrapped around me, too dangerous to answer and too impossible to ignore. My chest rose faster, betraying me, and his gaze flickered down to catch it. His hand brushed against mine, an innocent touch in appearance, but deliberate in its lingering weight. The world outside could have disappeared in that moment, and I wouldn't have noticed. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat was dry, my heart racing. He tilted his head slightly, studying me, waiting. The waiting itself was unbearable. Then his hand slid further, slow and deliberate, until his fingers caught mine, entwining them tightly. My pulse thundered. The charged silence between us broke with his whisper, "I can't stand the thought of you slipping away from me." It wasn't a declaration. It was a plea. And it bound me in ways I didn't expect. I turned toward him fully now, the blanket slipping further, leaving no barrier between our closeness. His eyes burned with an intensity that felt like both temptation and promise. I knew if I leaned forward, even an inch, there would be no turning back. And in that fragile, burning second, he moved. His hand tightened around mine, firm and unyielding, as if letting go would mean losing me forever. The lamplight flickered against his face, catching the hard set of his jaw, the hunger in his eyes. My breath caught when he leaned in, the space between us narrowing until only a whisper remained. "Say it," he demanded softly, his voice breaking with something more desperate than anger. "Say you still want me." My lips parted, the words trembling on the edge of release. But then, just as I drew closer, something shifted in his expression. It wasn't desire alone anymore. It was guilt. A flicker of hesitation, sharp and undeniable. I froze. My heart hammered. "What aren't you telling me?" He pulled back slightly, his grip loosening. For a moment, I thought he might deny it, hide behind the fragile intimacy we'd built tonight. But then his gaze dropped, and the silence grew heavier than the confession itself. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "One I can't take back." The room tilted. My stomach clenched. 100 possibilities stormed through me, another woman, another secret life, another betrayal wrapped in the body of the man who still held me like I was his lifeline. Who? My voice was raw, shaking. His jaw clenched. He didn't answer. And that silence told me more than words could. Anger burned hot, colliding with the undeniable pull I still felt toward him. My chest ached, not just from betrayal but from the cruel irony that even in this moment, when I should have pulled away, my body still leaned toward him, craving the closeness I knew was dangerous. "You think I didn't notice?" I whispered back, my voice sharp as glass. "The late nights, the empty words, the way you looked past me as if I wasn't here." His eyes flashed with pain, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he moved closer again, reckless, his hand sliding to the curve of my arm, holding me in place. "I wanted to stop," he said, the words tumbling out like a confession he could no longer contain. "But every time I looked at her, I saw the parts of you I thought I'd lost." My breath caught, fury and heartbreak colliding so violently I could hardly breathe. The betrayal cut deep, but the admission of longing, of desire misplaced, burned deeper. And yet, when his lips hovered just a breath from mine, I didn't move away. The risk, the pain, the danger of it all only pulled me tighter into the storm. The climax of truth hung between us, raw and irreversible. And then, just as he closed the last inch of distance, someone knocked at the door. The knock at the door shattered the moment like glass. I jerked back, his grip slipping from my arm as if burned. We both froze, staring at each other, our ragged breaths filling the silence. The second knock came harder, sharper, demanding. He stood slowly, guilt written across his face, as though he already knew who it was. My stomach turned. I rose too, wrapping the blanket tightly around me, bracing for a truth I wasn't ready to face. When he opened the door, the hallway light spilled in, harsh and unforgiving. And there she was. Her eyes flicked from him to me, the blanket clutched to my chest, the fallen book at the edge of the bed. Everything she needed to know was there in plain sight. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than any accusation. "Unbelievable," she hissed, her voice breaking, but her stare stayed locked on him. Not me. Him. I felt the room spin. This was the woman. The one he couldn't name. The one he had led into the space that was supposed to be mine. He reached out, voice cracking. "It's not what you think." Her laugh was bitter, cutting. "Don't lie now. You've already done enough." I couldn't hold back anymore. The rage, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it all erupted. "How long?" My words tore from me, shaking, raw. His silence was answer enough. I stepped forward, my chest rising and falling with fury. "You broke me, piece by piece, while still pretending to hold me together." His eyes shone with regret, but no excuse came. No plea strong enough to stitch the wound he'd opened. The other woman turned, tears streaking her face, and walked away. He didn't chase her. He just stood there, broken, caught between two truths he couldn't reconcile. I grabbed the book from the bed, holding it tight like a shield. I was here, waiting, every night. And you chose her. He moved closer, desperate, his voice trembling. But I'm choosing you now. If you'll let me. The weight of his words pressed down on me, heavy with both betrayal and longing. My heart warred with itself, one half screaming to leave, the other half aching with the memory of the man I once loved, the man still standing before me. Tears burned my eyes, and I whispered, if I let you back in, there can't be shadows between us anymore. He reached for me, slowly, as if afraid I'd vanish. And though every part of me screamed in conflict, I didn't pull away. The fight wasn't over. But neither was the love. The door clicked shut, leaving only the two of us in the dimly lit room. The echoes of raised voices and shattered truths still lingered, heavy and raw. I clutched the blanket around me, torn between the instinct to protect myself and the ache that still drew me toward him. He stood frozen, his chest rising and falling as if he'd run miles to get here. His eyes searched mine, pleading silently, not for forgiveness, but for a chance to prove he was still mine. For a long moment, I said nothing. The weight of betrayal still pressed against my ribs, but beneath it all, something deeper remained, the stubborn, unyielding love we had built through years of laughter, pain, and quiet moments like this. I finally broke the silence. Why should I believe you now? His voice cracked. Because I know what it feels like to lose you. And I can't live in that emptiness again. You are everything. The words weren't perfect, but they were raw, unpolished, and real. His hand hovered between us, waiting, trembling, not daring to touch me unless I allowed it. My breath caught as I looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who had held me through every storm, even if he had faltered this time. Slowly, deliberately, I let the blanket loosen. My free hand reached out, hesitating only for a heartbeat before settling into his. The warmth of his touch was both familiar and new, like a flame rekindled after almost going out. His relief was immediate, his shoulders sagging, his lips parting as though he could finally breathe again. He pulled me gently into his arms, careful, as if afraid I might vanish. The scent of him surrounded me, and for the first time that night, my heartbeat steadied instead of racing. I don't need promises, I whispered against his chest. I just need you to choose me, every day, without hesitation. His lips pressed into my hair, lingering there. I will. Always. We stood there, wrapped in the golden light, the chaos outside that door fading until only the two of us remained. No words could erase the cracks, but in that embrace, I felt the possibility of something stronger, a bond reforged, scarred but unbreakable. When he tilted my chin up and kissed me, it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was tender, reverent, like rediscovering something precious he'd almost lost. And this time, I didn't pull away. The story that began with silence and shadows closed with closeness and light, two hearts colliding not in betrayal, but in the fragile, beautiful decision to stay.